My name is Robert Jan Smits. I'm the president of the Eindhoven University of Technology, and I've been working actively with the European Parliament on the topic of academic freedom. And we have an excellent panel today with us for our webinar, and would like to briefly introduce the panelists. We have Professor Peter Maassen, who is Professor in Higher Education Studies at the Department of Education at the University of Oslo in Norway. We have Professor Antoine Petit. He's the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer at the CNRS in France. We have Professor Andrea Petu from the Central European University in Vienna. And we have Marcus Scheuren, who is the head of unit of the Scientific Foresight Unit, STOA, at the European Parliament. But before we go into discussion with the panel, I would like to give a short introduction from my side. Thanks to the European Parliament, and notably to one of its prominent members, Christian Ehler, the topic of academic freedom is high on the political agenda. And rightly so, because over the last decade, we have seen a sharp increase of infringements on academic freedom. And this is worrying, because academic freedom is one of the pillars of our democracies. But what is also worrying is that within the European Union, there are no effective legal instruments for the European Commission to take action when academic freedom is being violated. And this is why the European Parliament has asked the European Commission to look into this and to look into possible legal instruments to take action when there are infringements on academic freedom. And in a few minutes, Marcus Scheuren will say a few more words about the work of the European Parliament in this field. Well, as you all know, to prepare this webinar, we carried out a poll on the topic of academic freedom. And I'm very grateful to the respondents, quite a number of them, of the poll. And they were quite unanimous about the importance of a number of points. First of all, they underlined once again the importance of freedom to research and freedom to publish. They made it also quite clear that there is an essential need for university autonomy to be able to guarantee academic freedom. And last but not least, the respondents to the poll, they were also making a plea for setting up or establishing a kind of dedicated platform for permanent discussion on academic freedom. And I'm very grateful to Francius, our host of today, which is having offered to host such a dedicated platform. Now let's now go to our panelists, and I start with Marcus Scheuren of the European Parliament, the STOA unit, to give us a kind of an overview of some of the recent initiatives of the European Parliament and STOA in the field of academic freedom, and why the European Parliament got involved. So Marcus, over to you.
Thank you, Robert Jan. Good morning, colleagues, dear audience. Thank you to the organizers for Frontiers for having me and for organizing this important event. Indeed, my role as head of unit of STOA is to give you a bit of an overview of what's happening at EU level, in particular in the European Parliament. I would mention, well, you are already aware, obviously, that there's there is no legal framework. There's a reference of academic freedom in the Charter of Fundamental Rights and in some member states, but indeed there is no legal framework. Our chair, Dr. Christian Ehler, was also the rapporteur on the Horizon Europe program for many years, not only the last one, and he managed to sneak in a recital 72 in the last Horizon Europe program. For those who are not amateurs of EU legislation, you may be aware that recital is just a consideration that shall be taken into account. So as Robert Jan rightly pointed out in his opening remarks, it's not enforceable. We recently published a study looking at what effect this recital has so far for the Commission. And well, let me put it politely, the impact is mild so far. Also in order to promote a stronger legal framework, again, our chair, Christian Ehler, has led an initiative by the European Parliament for legislative in report suggesting that the Commission should put forward academic freedom protection in a future treaty revision. Again, for the amateurs of EU legal affairs or of the EU as such, you will be aware that is a high ambition, and obviously a treaty revision will take time, but it's already good that we or the European Parliament has put this on the agenda. Now, at our level at STOA, we have been working on this topic for a few years now already. In 2022, STOA study was conducted on how academic freedom is monitored by external experts, to make recommendations for the methodology and the scope of an annual EP academic freedom monitor, which was then to start in 2023. And we had a first pilot study, which was State of Play of Academic Freedom, overview of de facto trends and developments. And with that, then in 2023, we had the first edition, full edition of the EP Academic Freedom Monitor. Again, this was comprised of two studies. There was a synthesis report, which outlined the existing measurements of academic freedom in the EU, and then a latest trend analysis. Again, that was in 2023. Now we are in our third year. We are again looking at two studies. We will have a look this year specifically at the state of play of de jure academic freedom in selected member states. You will be aware that we cannot look at all member states at the same time. And then we will have a de facto overview of state of academic freedom at all member states, and also looking at both qualitative and quantitative analysis. And we hope to present the outcome of these studies at the end of this year, again, probably in December 2024, again, with the third edition of our high-level academic freedom conference, again, in the European Parliament in Brussels. So this is to give you an overview. So both Horizon Europe, the Legislative INI report, and what we're currently doing at STOA. In a broader context, obviously, you will be aware that Parliament elections are coming up on the 9th of May. Little commercial here. Please go and vote and send us members who will be interested in this topic and who will continue to work with us in the new mandate. Thank you for this opportunity to present you the EU overview at this point.
Thank you very much, Marcus. And I must say, I attended twice the high-level events with the Parliament organized, and the fact that the President of the European Parliament was present at those events shows the enormous political commitment at high level to the topic of academic freedom. So extremely grateful for all the work you are doing with your team, but also the European Parliament is doing to keep academic freedom high on the agenda. Now let's move to Antoine Petit, because Antoine, you are the head of a say world-leading research performing institution, lots of Nobel laureates in amongst your say history. You work on various disciplines, and of course, in such an organization, the topic of academic freedom will probably be non-stop on the agenda. Also because you are working with a lot of international partners, where academic freedom is not always guaranteed by the countries where they are located. So can you say a few words about what's going on at your organization to promote academic freedom at national level in your international context? Because I think it will be very interesting to hear from someone who is in charge of one of the most, say, prestigious research performing organizations, how you deal with academic freedom. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Robert Jan. Thank you to the organizers. Yes, as you said, the CNRS is a huge institution. We cover all fields of science, including humanities and social sciences. What we do at CNRS is fundamental research, but we try to do it for the benefit of society. And as you said, we are really international in the sense that we have more than 80 research structures outside the France territory in 30 or even 32 countries. And so we have to face two different aspects of academic freedom. Since, for instance, I cannot say we have, but we had research structure in Russia. We still have in China. And so, as you can imagine, this could lead to very different problems. And we clearly are deeply committed to academic freedom, and perhaps more particularly to freedom of research, which you can consider as some kind of research performing organization view of academic freedom. And clearly, this freedom of research is a pillar of academic freedom. So we, as I said, we are really concerned by this academic freedom, and we try to reaffirm very regularly our commitment on this freedom. And we did it in particularly some months ago with our colleagues from the J6. So let me recall that the J6 is an informal network which gathers 6 major European research performing organizations: the Italian CNR, the Spanish CSIC, 3 German Helmholtz, Leibniz Association, and Max Planck, and also CNRS. And we published some years ago a statement to reaffirm our commitment to the freedom of research. But also, we fully endorse our role and responsibility as research organization. I think it's very important also that recall that in some sense our duty is to safeguard integrity, responsible research, and ethical boundaries, and also to maintain the high standard of scientific practice. But I would say the counterpart of this is also the responsibility of researchers and research institutions concerning ethical questions, self-regulation, and scientific integrity, which is really the also face of the coin of the academic freedom. And perhaps it's good also to lament the confusion between academic freedom and freedom of expression. This implies very often a confusion between opinion and knowledge. And opinion, of course, is what must be freely expressed by everyone, but opinion is not a scientific fact. Knowledge is a result of a scientific approach based on what was already known, but using rules and methods specific to the field of study, but also use shared data, all validated by peers. And that's very important and sometimes we have to recall it that certain things that the earth is flat, for instance, or that God created the world is not academic freedom. It's freedom of expression, but it's not academic freedom. That's really important from my point of view for the responsibility of science in face to democracy. And these beliefs, which are contrary to scientific knowledge, cannot be used as a pretext to prohibit the teaching of evolution or to conduct research related to Darwinism, to take just two examples. And clearly, freedom of expression, to which we are also attached, is one of the pillars of our democracy. And in some sense, it can be paradoxical that it can be used by some to try to limit and even constrain academic freedom. And clearly, from my point of view, no room should be given to the inquisitive apprentice of the 21st century. We do not have to believe that the problem of academic freedom is only in authoritarian regimes. We have such questions also in our democratic countries. And I think we have to be very vigilant with those who want to limit the freedom of research for, I would say, so-called good reasons, such as a carbon footprint or of scientific activities. Scientists, I think we are responsible citizens who take care to limit their carbon footprints, both from a personal and professional point of view. And so I think we should never ban certain activities because the carbon footprint is too large. Just to give you a very easy example, the study of the poles and the consequences of global warming on the loss of biodiversity undoubtedly has a significant energy cost. But these studies are essential to our understanding and ability to limit global warming and anticipate its effect. And so clearly, we do not have to ban them. And we have long known that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And just to conclude this first intervention, one should bear in mind that the academic freedom shall never be taken for granted. and it is often the result of fierce battles, just as all fight for freedom. And all these battles are necessary, as I said, in dictatorships or authoritarian regimes, of course, but also sometimes, I would like to say, unfortunately, in democracies such as those in which we are lucky enough to live here in Europe. And clearly, this non-negotiable right to academic freedom is so important that but it's also, I have to recall that, as I said before, this has a counterpart for researchers. And I just like to conclude by quoting the CNRS Ethics Committee, who wrote, by expressing themselves in the public arena, researchers commit their responsibility as scientists. If they state their status, they must specify in what capacity they are speaking, as a specialist providing their expertise on the subject under discussion, as a representative of the research organization of an institution, or just as a committed citizen, or even as an activist. And I was really, really fond of this CNRS Ethics Committee assessment, because I think that it's really, we have to fight for academic freedom, but we also have to explain that we are really conscious of our responsibility as researchers, and to pay attention to really express, when we express ourselves, in which position we do it.
Thank you very much, Antoine, and I'm very impressed by your leadership on the topic of academic freedom in Europe and beyond. And you represent a very prestigious organization, CNRS, and I think having a person like you standing up for academic freedom is essential, certainly in these times of polarization, where very often there's so much tension that even scientists are afraid to publish or to express the results of their research, because it may not always be suitable for the ears of the ones who don't want to hear it. So thank you very much. And we move now to Andrea, because Andrea, you are a researcher who has been affected by infringements on academic freedom. As a matter of fact, your university, the Central European University, had to move from Budapest and reestablish itself in Vienna. So you know everything about not having academic freedom or seeing infringements on academic freedom. And it's also good to hear a few words from you, how you have experienced that and what should be done in order to make sure that academic freedom is not infringed. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Robert-Jan. Thanks for the invitation. And in the chat, I put some of the readings which will not fit into my 5-minute intervention, which I actually wrote it up. So here is the story. In a sunny day in 1995, a group of people were inspecting a dilapidated former workers' hostel in the suburb of Budapest. The well-dressed English-speaking visitors with heavy American accent were looking for a dormitory of a university founded in 1991 in Prague. CEU was born from the tradition of flying universities, as during communism, and this passionate and free approach to science necessarily created a new form of higher educational institution after the collapse of communism. In 1995, this so-called boutique university had to move from departments from Prague to Budapest because of the conservative Czech government policies, while some university departments were still operational in Warsaw. The rector, then late Alfred Stepan, was happy when he saw this former workers' hostel in Budapest, and he said, I quote, "And if all goes wrong, we will sell it as a 3-star hotel," end quote. At that time, in 1995, we thought with full of optimism, how could anything goes wrong? Then the CEU Warsaw campus was closed down and Budapest was closed down. And by now we know it all went terribly wrong, not only for CEU, but the European higher education. So I was asked today to share my personal story as the 4th employee of CEU from 1991, how CEU was defeated by illiberal forces and has not received any effective, tangible help outside the conservative Kurz government in Austria and the city of Vienna. So 23 years after the visit of this former workers' hostel on June 22nd, 2017, in the fully packed, newly built auditorium of Central European University in Budapest, the Nobel Prize-winning author from Peru, Mario Vargas Llosa, spoke about Budapest, so-called small local difficulty. That is a quote from him. The audience laughed lightheartedly at this ironic description, given the most of them had spent at least 3 months sharing information with the academic world about how the amendment of the higher education bill in Hungary, commonly known as Lex CEU, was targeting CEU and threatening its existence as well as its everyday operation. Just before the Lex CEU, the accredited master program in gender study was deleted from the accredited study list without any explanation by the Hungarian government. When any academic discipline is regulated by politicians, then that is the end of academic freedom, as we know now from Denmark to France or to the US. The fight against Lex CEU has happened on 7 levels. Still, faculty, students, staff felt betrayed, as nearly all institutions involved performed at their worst, and more importantly, none of them had a real impact on the liberal Hungarian government. So what were the 7 levels? First, the unproductive exchange of letters between the Hungarian government and the European Commission. The European Commission has taken the first steps towards launching an infringement procedure against Hungary, still going on. Second, the European Parliament has passed a resolution calling for repeal of Lex CEU. No impact. Third, the Venice Commission, an advisory board of the Council of Europe, sent a fact-finding group to Budapest to meet the parties involved. The report also was clear, but remained without consequences. Fourth, the Hungarian Constitutional Court has set up an ad hoc group to review the law. No real action is expected from a constitutional court, only consisting appointees of the liberal government. Fifth, the governor of the state of New York, where CEU is accredited, Andrew M. Cuomo, who had earlier issued a statement of support for CEU and had ongoing talks with the Hungarian government to keep CEU open. No any kind of result. Sixth, in 2017, serious protest against CEU occurred in Budapest and other Hungarian cities. The largest demonstration brought 80,000 people on the streets. No result. Seventh, tens of thousands of academics for all over the world signed petitions, sent emails, and posted letters and statements supporting CEU. And I'm sure some of the listeners today did sign letters and petitions. Thanks for that. But there is a lesson we could all learn. We lost, we were betrayed, and none of the 7 mechanisms listed here could fight effectively a captured illiberal state implementing Russian type of science policy. Why? The long success of the illiberal Hungarian government in the European research area is even more clear, as they not only managed to get rid of CEU without consequences, but managed to privatize the whole Hungarian educational sector in 2 weeks. The efficiency of this project caught the attention of President Trump and promised to implement the same policy in the US when elected. The illiberal government controls the whole academic authorization system through the Hungarian Accreditation Committee, introduced a new model in employing faculty as precarious workers without rights and autonomy. This sounds like a horror story, but the liberal Hungarian government also managed to achieve that the Hungarian higher education jumped in international rankings. How is this Hungarian wonder possible? It's simple. The Hungarian public money spent on profit-oriented ranking agencies to promote Hungarian higher education, as their plan is to double the number of foreign students studying in Hungary. This could be only achieved with hijacking or corrupting the international ranking agencies, as the similar efforts of illiberal Hungarian government remain undisturbed while they hijack the whole Hungarian higher education, giving an example for the rest of the world. And this investment in international ranking agencies is not that costly, as would real structural investment into higher education. Now, as we speak today, in 2024, CEU is operating in a rented, shabby old bank building from 1950s in one of the suburbs of Vienna, nearly for 5 years, by slowly emptying the downtown fantastic Budapest campus by renting it for Budapest for business events. But for sure, a 3-star hotel, a former workers' hostel, might show up on the Hungarian estates market for sale soon. CEU is forced to move from Budapest. It signaled a failure of open society, democracy, academic freedom globally, together with the institutions expected to protect it. By now, the European infrastructure of quality assurance or the global ranking are also hijacked by illiberal forces which are ruthlessly using public money to question the previously unquestionable connection between liberal democracy and scientific excellence. The Hungarian government purchased now a university in Vienna, exporting their illiberal values and practices to Austria. We are now in a new Cold War, which is waged inside the countries, not between blocks of states equipped with nuclear weapons, but in university campuses and on university lawns, when students are camping. And together with the deceit of illiberal universities, even the existence of public universities are at stake now. Now it is clear that the Hungarian illiberal science policy will not be only so-called small local difficulty, end quote, but rather beginning of a new and ugly era for the European higher education. Thank you.
Well, that's quite emotional presentation, Andrea, but based on
I don't think it was emotional. It's mostly academic, and please read the articles which are there. Thank you.
That's an emotional presentation, but based on a lot of hard facts. And the main message is that it's quite frustrating that despite all the protests, despite all the letters, all the petitions, nothing really has been able to change the situation in your country. So that has been quite, I think, frustrating for everyone. And I remember very well, I was myself working at the European Commission. I visited the CEU in Budapest on a couple of occasions, reported to the European Commission about what was going on. But unfortunately, not measures were taken in order to really bring this, to a change. And that is indeed to be deplored. And that calls once again for, I think, very strong legal instruments with the European Commission in order to take action when these things happen. Let's move now to Peter Maassen, because Peter, you have been quite active in developing the monitor. The monitor on academic freedom, which has been published. And perhaps say a few words about how the monitor is functioning and how you see the future of the monitor and the work, of course, with the European Parliament.
Thank you, Robert-Jan, and thank you to the organizers for this important webinar focused on academic freedom. And we all are aware of the importance of the work that is being done to protect academic freedom. And just to refer to Andrea's presentation at the start, and also keeping in mind something Antoine said, we shouldn't take academic freedom for granted. In 2012, the Council of Europe accepted a resolution which was sent as a recommendation to all 46 member states, indicating that the member states are, the governments of the member states are responsible for protecting and promoting academic freedom and institutional autonomy. This was an important resolution, but it was taken for granted. There was no reference in the resolution to any studies done, to any immediate threats, and it didn't get a lot of attention. 12 years later, the situation is completely different. And as Andrea presented in detail, one of the key events in the changing awareness of the not just the importance of academic freedom, but the fact that there is a gradual erosion going on in our part of the world and serious infringements in many other parts of the world. The closing down, in essence, of the Central European University in Budapest and moving it to Vienna was a very important, a key event that led to all kinds of actions. But as Andrea indicated, until now, we are still struggling with getting an effective protective set of measures, supportive measures to deal with the threats to and violations of academic freedom. What did the CEU case learn us? First, that the legal framework conditions at the European level are not sufficient to deal with these major infringements of academic freedom and institutional autonomy. Second, there is not a clear agreement on what academic freedom in our time frame actually stands for. We noticed in our work on the monitor, and it has been reported by many, that there's a lack of agreement within the academic community on what academic freedom is, how important it is. There's a lack of agreement on the key components. As Antoine was referring to, freedom of expression is often connected to academic freedom, but freedom of expression in general is not part of academic freedom, etc. So there are many, many questions, many, many issues. There are also many initiatives. The Central European University has set up a monitor. Andrea is also a member of an important COST project. There's the work of Scholars at Risk. LERU has published important documents. There is the Academic Freedom Index, which has gotten a lot of attention. And the Academic Freedom Index showed that there is a growing group of countries where serious institutionalized infringements of academic freedom are taking place. And then there's a group of countries where overall the situation with respect to academic freedom seems relatively okay. In the EU, with the exception of Hungary, we have some worries about Poland and Greece, according to the Academic Freedom Index. But in all other EU member states, the situation seems to be okay. And we know that has to be taken very critically. So what did the initiative of the European Parliament address? Marcus has introduced it. I don't have to go into details, but in essence, the European Parliament set up an academic freedom forum that was intended to provide space for politicians, academics, stakeholders to come together to discuss a number of key issues. A, what does academic freedom stand for in our time frame, in our academic communities, in our societies? B, what is our knowledge base on academic freedom? So we know that there are these studies going on, but there's very little structured, comparative, in-depth academic studies on the situation of academic freedom. So what can we do to get a better understanding of the actual threats, in addition to clear infringements like the Central European University? And how can we contribute to strengthened protection? What kind of measures are possible? So in the European Parliament studies, I've been, with my colleagues in Oslo, responsible for the de facto state of play overview, starting with a pilot study, as Marcus was referring to, and trying to begin contributing to a better understanding of developments of academic freedom within EU member states, where, as the Academic Freedom Index is indicating, in general, things seem to be pretty positive. Our study showed that also in the European Union member state, there is a clear erosion going on in essence in all member states. This is not an erosion which consists of clear violations like the CEU case, but it is an erosion that consists of many different threats, many developments that are threatening academic freedom that come from various sides. So we used the pilot study and the 2023 study for the Academic Freedom Monitor for the Parliament to identify the main sources for these threats to academic freedom in the EU. And to summarize them, there is still traditional but also new threats coming from politics, as both governments and parliaments. Political parties. There is threat coming from new leadership of universities, the more executive leadership. There are many cases where academics feel threatened by the way in which this executive nature of university leadership has been operationalized. There's a threat coming from within the academic community, where there are worries about the lack of tolerance and the fact that traditional tensions, disagreements, conflicts are now leading to exclusions instead of promoting and further developing our academic basis. There is the private sector. There's also within the context of the COVID-19 a growing attack on academics, individuals, academic groups by social groups. Anti-vaxxers is an example, using social media. And more recently, there's a growing worry about how new national and EU security policies affect the academic freedom. So within the European Parliament's monitor, we are at the beginning of developing both a conceptual and methodological approach to a qualitative understanding of academic freedom. We have not developed indicators because we feel at this stage that indicators might be misleading. We are also contributing with our colleagues in the STOA panel in the various studies that are being done by the European Parliament to coordinate with the work of the Council of Europe that has started a new project, Democratic Mission of Higher Education, with academic freedom in action as a key component. The work of the European Commission, where later this week in Tirana, a proposal for an academic freedom or a basic values monitor will be presented. And we will be very interested in identifying the key ambitions of this monitor and the extent to which it can contribute to the kind of progress that is needed that Andrea was also referring to. We need better legal framework protections. We need better understanding of what the threats are and how they could be dealt with. But we also need to have a better understanding, for example, of how do we create an effective balance between legal framework protection and an analysis of academic freedom from an academic point of view. If we look at the media sector, there are independent bodies that deal with conflicts. We don't have such a body or these bodies within academia. So all cases that are taken seriously go to court. But court isn't always able or willing to deal with the threats to academic freedom from the perspective of the academic community. Academic freedom, for example, always loses out in comparison to academic labor law, which is seen as more important than academic freedom. So we have to look carefully at the instruments we have, which new instruments are needed to be developed, what kind of coordination is needed. One thing that we could also come back to in the final discussion is what kind of structures and instruments are needed at the European level that could really be helpful and also helpful in developing solutions and ways to deal much more effectively the kind of basic infringements that the CEU has gone through than we have been able to do so until now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thanks for all your work and commitment to academic freedom. And there's still a lot of work to be done. Marcus, a quick reaction to what Peter just said. I think the Parliament needs to continue its support to the monitor, but also to the topic of academic freedom. I think I see you nodding. I really hope that even after the elections, academic freedom stays high on the political agenda of the Parliament. Can you give us some reassurance?
Well, obviously, it's the voters' decision on 9th of May, but I'm very hopeful and positive that after 9th of May, 9th of June, sorry, 9th of June, that there will be a majority again in this House that will uphold the interest and the fight for academic freedom also in STOA and in the plenary. So as I outlined earlier, so the work on the ongoing studies is continuing, and so we hope to feed into our high-level event at the end of the year. I hope also the new president, whoever that is, whether it's the outgoing new president, will continue to be a patron for this initiative, and that will continue to stay a European Parliament initiative. As you know, it's not only STOA, it's really the whole of the European Parliament working on this together. And actually, it was the Industry, Research, Energy Committee, ITRE, who has been working on it, the CULT Committee, which is responsible education and culture. So there are several committees who have been also working together on this important topic. So as a humble civil servant, I cannot preempt the decision of our political masters, but I'm sure our work will continue beyond what's happening in 2 weeks' time. That being said, I mean, and I totally echo what Peter and the other co-panelists have been said, that there's also, we see the threat at political level. We will probably see more illiberal political representatives in the new European Parliament. That's at least what the polls suggest. We'll hope that will still be a minority, but it will be a vocal minority. So it's something we will have to face as well in the new mandate.
Okay, thank you very much for this reaction. And at least there will be from the side of STOA in the European Parliament. So continue support for these activities. Brings me a little bit to the final topic of our webinar, and that is this idea of setting up a dedicated platform for continuous and permanent discussion. Because we have the monitor, we have all kinds of academic work going on, then we have once per year high-level events at the European Parliament, but there is not such a thing, such as a platform on a daily basis where people can have discussion and where people can exchange views. And I've been discussing this idea with some colleagues, and I'm very grateful that Frontiers is willing to help us with that, to set up such a dedicated platform where people can exchange on a daily basis information, experiences, talk to each other, and share academic studies, conceptual work, methodological work. In other words, on a permanent basis, and not once per year people get together. So I would like to hear your opinion on this idea of setting such a dedicated platform. I start with you, Antoine. What is your view on that?
Well, in one word, I think it would be a very, very good idea, but in the sense that in CNRS we are a big fan of open science, and but I think that this platform should not be fully open. I mean by that it has not to become a social network where everybody can present his views. I think that it has to be moderated precisely to prevent all the less liberal people to explain that they are in favor of academic freedom, but they want to restrict it in some particular case, which of course we will disagree. But the fact to share what we do, what we think, I think it's very important. It's very important for all our colleagues in dictatorships. But as the webinar show, it's also important in Europe. And as Marcus said, we don't know exactly what will happen in the future by definition. But the pools are not really encouraging. And so to have such a platform, really, from my point of view, can be the occasion that all the people who really believe that academic freedom is key, but not granted, can share their views. I think it's really an interesting idea, and CNRS will support it without any hesitation, clearly.
Thank you very much, Antoine. Andrea, from your side, what do you think of the idea?
Thank you very much, Robert-Jan, for this. And what we learned from the attack on gender studies and also an attack on CEU is actually can be found in this COST network, which is aiming to set up this permanent infrastructure. So what we learned from the attack on gender studies, that, you know, we had all the support of professional organizations and even the important politicians who should remain nameless here. I got emails from them personally saying that they are very much supporting the fight for gender studies, but it really did not help. What helped is that we actually set up an invisible organization, which is called the Gender International, which is a totally informal organization with Judith Butler, Joan Scott, and the other really important figures in the field. And we are monitoring what is happening. And this without any formal structures, but using our professional common sense. And when we are actually recognizing that there is really a serious infringement happening, then we use what we can use the best, shaming and media. So on the one hand, the legal framework is really important to have it on the European level. But if you look at the national level, each and every constitution and each and every legal framework is actually stating the academic freedom and the freedom of speech. But in practice, it's not happening. So how to close this gap? You can use this gap by shaming. You can use this gap by using media. And also you can use this, close this gap by setting up different kind of regional monitoring hubs. And that's what the COST network is aiming to do, coordinating the different attempts and infrastructures which are already there in order to create an independent but solidly professional organization which is trying to help the academics. Because, you know, all these reports are fantastic, but when you face the evil, then you are alone in the most cases. And then you look around, whom do you trust? And mostly you trust colleagues and you trust those who went through the fire before. And that's why this kind of legal framing is important, but very often the trade union is helpful because the academics are precarious employees nowadays. So the legal framework is helpful when it is in the framework of the labor law. And then, you know, that it's also an important commitment from the universities, because what they are usually doing, they are offering mental help, mental service support for the academics who are being attacked, or they are the victims of different digital attacks, which is also happening very often. So in a sense, this kind of professionally grounded, informal, but solidly academic and reliable support system parallel with the legal framework should be really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andrea. Peter, what do you think of the idea, the platform? You have to unmute yourself, Peter. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert-Jan. I think it is important that we look at experiences with platforms. Andrea has referred to an experience, and we can also look at the Dutch experience. Dutch higher education system, the universities have set up a platform aimed at dialogue, exchange of information, but also aimed at follow-up. And I think that's key with such a platform. So what can we learn from the Dutch case? That's one thing. Then follow-up is extremely important. I mean, there will be lots of interactions, of dialogues, which will be exchange of experience and not necessarily in need of a follow-up, but you might in such a platform also get information on very serious breaches or violations of academic freedom. And then the question is whether such a platform can provide a follow-up, can provide a support, can provide solutions, can provide the necessary attention. So that's why I want to repeat my plea that was also launched in the US as part of the discussion on academic freedom, as well as in Norway. Wouldn't it be time to set up one or more independent bodies next to a platform where dialogue could take place, independent bodies where serious violations of academic freedom could be judged by experts and representatives from the academic community with the power to make recommendations also in the legal direction, and also recommendations about punishments, about support needed, etc. There are experiences, not just in the media, also in the legal system, where there are independent bodies to deal with conflicts within the judicial system. So we could learn from these experiences, because I think the threats to academic freedom are now also in Europe becoming so serious that only providing a platform for dialogue will not be enough. We have to create a structure for follow-up also.
Thank you very much, Peter. Marcus, a short reflection from your side on this idea of the platform, because I noticed that STO has a very small team and you have a lot on your plates, and it is important that we keep academic freedom and discussion academic freedom on a permanent basis. So from your side, a quick reaction.
No, absolutely. I think I can echo what most colleagues said. I think it would be a welcome complement to what we are doing, as you say, on a daily level, which obviously we cannot provide for obvious reasons. I would echo very much what Antoine said, that it would have to be moderated somehow. It should focus on practical solutions and day-to-day cases. And indeed, there should be some role for follow-up. Personally, I'm doubtful whether there can be, I mean, we discussed before the legal enforcement problem. So I see a difficulty for a role of how somebody should enforce what is not enforceable. But indeed, some role for, first of all, content moderation, and then some contact point at least to complement that initiative. But the initiative itself would be very welcome, and I think it's something that we as STO, as Parliament, would appreciate as a complementary initiative.
All right, thank you very much. We're gradually moving towards the end of our seminar. I think we could talk for hours still about this topic, but I would like to bring it to a couple of conclusions. I've been writing a couple of things down. I think first of all, also following the statements by you all, the situation with regard to academic freedom has not improved over the last years. On the contrary, we see a lot of infringements. And therefore, this topic, and it's my conclusion number one, academic freedom needs to continue to stay high on the political agenda of the European Parliament after the elections. And that's something essential, that this does not become a second or third point of importance on the agenda of the European Parliament, political agenda after elections. Secondly, I think it's important, and we discussed it at the beginning, that legal instruments are developed. It is, of course, also following Andreas' experience, very bizarre, that besides all kinds of talks, resolutions, letters, there is not an appropriate legal instrument available for the European Commission to take action when things get out of hand. So this legal instrument remains important, and I'm very grateful that also Christian Ehler is constantly asking the Commission to see what instruments can be developed for action to be taken. I think thirdly, and there I look a little bit at Peter, the excellent work of the monitor needs to be continued, but also work on the conceptual and methodological approach to academic freedom, as you mentioned, Peter, that needs to be continued, because there's a lot of confusion about academic freedom, what it is and what it is not, freedom of speech, autonomy. I think this requires further work on conceptual methodological, studies. And then my last conclusion, final conclusion, is regarding the platform. There is a need for a more permanent, dialogue on academic freedom, instead of having, a conference once a year or twice, two conferences, and then we have a monitor. That we need some kind of a platform where people can share experiences, where they can get together. But we need to really think about how the platform could operate, learn from the Gender International, as Andrea said, learn from experience in certain member states, like in the Netherlands, and see then how we can possibly make it work. And once again, I'm very grateful to Frontiers, who has offered to support us with such a platform, because we need an organization, a big organization, if you would like to put this into practice, who can really also provide the support for the platform to run. So this is more or less the conclusions I have arrived at after our rich debates, and I'm extremely grateful, of course, for the audience, but also for the panelists for their active participation and preparation. I'm gradually wrapping things up, and I thank once again the audience and the panelists, but also Frontiers for making this possible. And then we have, I think, a couple of interesting reports and articles I think we should draw to your attention and the attention of the audience. There's the commentary of Peter Maassen on how to avoid the further erosion of academic freedom in Europe. And the QR code will help you to get this interesting commentary. And then there's also an interesting, say, academic freedom, embracing diverse voices, peer-reviewed articles, which certainly are worthwhile looking into. And also here you see the code on how you can access these articles and these studies. And that brings me then really to the end of the webinar. Very grateful for the ones attending and the ones speaking and the ones who have made it possible, Frontiers, but also to particularly to Anke Beck, with whom from Frontiers, with whom I've been working over the last couple of weeks to make this possible. So thanks once again, and I wish us all a great and sunny day with lots of academic freedom. Thank you very much.